Boatworks Today is sponsored by Total Boat and Alexseal Yacht Coatings, as well as supported by the generosity from the beautiful folks over on Patreon. Thank you so much. Tell you something I'm just now noticing. I've got like this blue thing coming up and I just figured out why. Maybe, just maybe, could be a reflection of this. Wow, that blue looks so... So welcome back to the shop, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. My name is Andy with Boatworks Today, and this week I want to cover a topic. Well, it's essentially out of necessity. There's been some questions that have been coming up over and over and over, and honestly, I don't know the exact answer, and it's probably something that I should know. But specifically, I work with a lot of people who are in the middle of various stages of their project. And right now, there seems to be like a bit of a bottleneck of folks getting to the point of applying their non-skid. And they're using Alexseal paint along with the soft sand. And what they're trying to figure out, and what I don't have a good answer for, is how much mileage, what kind of coverage do you get when you're actually saturating the soft sand, or something along something similar. But when you're saturating non-skid particles, how much coverage do you get out of a given mix, say like a quart or a half a gallon or a gallon of material? And honestly, I don't know, because that type of coverage is going to be much different than if you were just painting out a smooth area, something that doesn't have any texture, something that doesn't have any kind of a grit material in there that's going to be absorbing paint on top of just actually covering the surface. Now, before we dive into this, I want to relay some information to those of you that may be attending the Newport Boat Show this year. Fall is right around the corner. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, I guess I don't really know. It depends on where you live, I guess. But that fall time means boat shows, and this year is no different. I know for certain I'm going to be attending the Newport show. Annapolis is still a little bit up in the air, and I think it's Fort Lauderdale. I think that one's still very much up in the air, but I've got time for that one. That's at least 2 months out. But Newport is quite literally 4 weeks out. Now, if you're going to be attending, you can go to the Newport Boat Show website and you can pre-purchase your tickets online. Now, if you use the discount code BoatWorks5, and I'll have links down below to both the Newport website as well as kind of spelling out the actual discount code, but it's BoatWorks5, like the number 5. And that'll take $5 off of each ticket for Friday as well as Sunday. I don't think the discount code applies to Saturday, but on Friday and Sunday, which in my opinion are probably the better days to go because it's not so crowded, you can get to wherever you want to go a lot easier, the lines are shorter, but whatever. Not everybody's always able to attend on those 2 days. But anyways, like I said, if you use the discount code BoatWorks5, you can get $5 off of up to 2 tickets per purchase. And that'll be for Friday and Sunday attendance. Now, I will say, if you are going to be in the area and you've never been to the Newport show, I highly recommend it. Now, last year was the first year that I had ever done anything like this. And Total Boat, again, they're kind of doing the same thing that we did last year. So last year, Total Boat kind of got behind myself and like 5 or 6, maybe even 7 other different channels online, whether they were just they were all boating related. Some were like actual cruising channels, some were just boating channels like boat reviews and that kind of thing. But it was a really good group of people that they assembled and had working their booths with them. And it was a blast. I mean, it was busy, kind of a little bit hectic, don't get me wrong, but it was a blast. The weather was absolutely perfect. We had an excellent turnout. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, over the course of that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever, I forget which days it was, literally everybody there met hundreds, if not maybe even 1,000 or more people within those 3 days. It was absolutely insane. And I'm looking forward to it again. That was so much fun. So at least last year, and I'm presuming it's going to be very similar this year, but overall the way that this worked was, each of the channels, like myself and, everybody else, but each of the channels kind of had a time slot throughout, certain days that we would be at the Total Boat booth. And you come in, you kind of chit chat, if you had some questions, share your projects, anything that you want. You can just stop right up to the booth and meet any of us. It was like I said, it was a lot of fun. For myself, because I talk with a lot of people online when I'm doing consultations and stuff, it was, at least for me, it was really, really cool to be able to put a face to a name or like an email address. I bet I ran into 30 or 40 people that I've worked with over the past year. I, got to meet them in person, and it was just a lot of fun. And afterwards, if you're involved with the whole Patreon thing, some of us, we also had some private Patreon meetups. I know the place that I was at was about 2 blocks away from the show, so it was really convenient. Kind of a nice private atmosphere. They closed off the whole basement or the bar area. We had full, food spread. It was just, it could not have gone any better. So here's the plan. I mixed up the paint. I mixed up 4 ounces total. So that would have been 2 ounces of the actual paint base and then 1 ounce each of the converter as well as the reducer. Now you notice, because this is a non-skid demo, I did not add any of their rolling additive, their A5018, because it's not needed. You're only going to use that additive when you're doing a smooth surface. It's a smooth surface that will be finished smooth. If you're going to be doing non-skid, that additive is not used at any stage of this process. Now, I go into a lot more depth in a prior video on how, basically start to finish, to include primer coats and basically start to finish, how to do this type of non-skid without having to do any sanding in between any of the coats. As long as you can stick with it for, I think it's 4 consecutive days, you can go from a raw fiberglass surface to a finished non-skid surface in 4 days, no sanding in between. It works out pretty slick. So obviously the primer steps, we're kind of skipping over that because I'm checking to see what the coverage is going to be with the paint. If we look at it as, say like we're laying down our prime coats first, the prime coats are going to get the same, type of coverage that's outlined in their TDS or their technical data sheets. And just off the top of my head, I want to say it's figuring in some last figure around 225 square feet per mixed gallon of material. So you can break that down per square foot. But anyways, so right here, I just taped off roughly a 12 by 12 inch space. So it's 1 square foot. And then with the 4 ounces, I'm going to pour out what I think is going to be enough just to coat this. I'm going to sprinkle in the soft sand non-skid. Now here I'm using their medium grit. Now this may change things a little bit if you go with their fine or with their coarse. But I've always used their medium texture. And for me, that's just, as far as appearance and how it feels on your feet and traction that it gives you, I find that the medium works the best, in my opinion. But in any event, that's what we're going to be using for this demo here. So I'm going to pour out probably 2 or 3 ounces, get this coated, get the soft sand sprinkled in, and then I'm going to take whatever is left in this cup, as well as whatever I can pour out from this tray, pour that in just so I can see how much we actually used, whatever's left, minus that from 4 ounces, and that's how much we used to get this initial coat. Now I know that this is not going to soak up much, or that it's not going to require much. Probably what's going to soak up the most paint is just going to be getting this roller wet out. So in total, we were able to recover just under 3 ounces. So we used roughly 1 ounce of material, mixed material, per square foot. And also, and again, this is one part I can't stress enough, and I hammer it home in that other video that I'll link down below here where I go through this non-skid process start to finish. But when you're sprinkling out the soft sand or any of your non-skid grit, regardless of whatever it is better to just dog pile it on, because you know, I'll come in tomorrow and I'll be able to recoup anything that didn't stick in the paint. I'll be able to recoup that and then reuse it someplace else. So just because you lay it down very heavily here does not mean that you're wasting any of it, because you know the paint will absorb, or the paint will grab whatever it can. Anything that's left, you'll be able to recoup that and reuse it. Now the advantage of just dog piling it on like this is that, as you'll see, the texture that you're going to be left with when this is all said and done is going to be extremely consistent and uniform, top to bottom, side to side. Everywhere you look, it is going to look exactly the same. And that is, you know, versus if you were to try it and be a little bit light when you're sprinkling it out, you're going to have some heavy patches and some light patches, and it's going to look very muddled and inconsistent. Honestly, it's going to look like amateur hour. So it's better off lay it on heavy and recoup, you know, whatever you can the following day and move on. So good morning. I've already gone ahead and mixed up another batch of paint, and it's identical to what I did yesterday. So it's 2 ounces of paint and then 1 ounce each of the converter and the reducer. Now I don't think that I'm gonna go through all 4 ounces on here, but I am gonna apply this a little bit differently than what I did yesterday. So rather than pour out a little bit into the paint tray here and then soak it up, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna incrementally just kind of pour some paint in here and work it around. I think that'll give me a little bit more accurate reading as far as how much was actually used versus how much kind of got wasted in the paint tray. So that's the plan. Now when I'm applying this, compared to the first coat, which we did yesterday, this is going to go on quite a bit heavier. This is going to be one of what I consider to be, or what I call seal coats. And basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to completely saturate and lock in all of this soft sand, all the non-skid texture of the soft sand. And we don't want to be shy with this. I mean, you want that surface to be wet. Now, I'm not saying you won't necessarily want to see puddles or anything like that, but you want it to be uniformly wet out. I mean, you don't want to see any dry patches anywhere. So hopefully this is going to be able to come across on camera. This is what I'm saying. This is still too dry. You can still see specks of the soft sand through the paint. Now this over here, this all looks perfect. And then as we start trying to spread this around, you can see we're getting dry patches all the way around. This is what we do not want. This is how we want that surface to look. So I'm going to pour out a little bit more, kind of around the perimeter. And when you're pouring it like this, if you happen to get it on a little bit too heavy, you can come back and use the roller to absorb any of the excess. You know, I mean, you may need to kind of soak it up, work it off into the tray here. But just as long as you're not pouring it on to the point where, you know, it's literally running all over the place, because the surface that you're going to be potentially doing some non-skid on isn't always going to be flat. I mean, if there's any kind of like a slope or a radius or anything like that, you could run into the paint, you know, kind of running away on you until you get it worked into the non-skid. But this ended up being about perfect. And again, here I'm just kind of coming back and back dragging. If there's any excess here, I mean, the non-skid is only going to hold as much paint as it wants or as it needs. So I mean, you can dogpile it on, come back, and then soak up any of the excess that the non-skid does not need. And this is what I'm talking about. So if you load up your roller, you can unload it into the tray. And come back. Get any of that excess that's sitting up on the surface. And now we're going to wait for a little bit. Now, typically what I suggest is doing each of these two seal coats 12 to 24 hours apart. No more than 24, but ideally no less than 12. And the reason for that is because of how heavy we had to apply this material. Now, if we were doing a smooth coat, no non-skid, you can come back and recoat, and what did Brian and Miguel say? I think it was like 4 to 6 hours, something like that. Depending on your conditions with temperature and airflow and all this other good stuff. But for non-skid, typically I like to push it out a little bit further just to make sure that all the solvent has had a chance to flash off, and that the paint itself is kind of set up to the point where when you come over with that second seal coat, we're not going to loosen that first coat because we're introducing fresh solvent. Now, that said, I'm going to cheat this a little bit because, well, I can. This is an experiment and it's just a demo. Now, if I were doing this on an actual project, I would be checked out for the day and I'd come back again within that 12 to 24 hour window. But here, I'm going to try and come back again in about 5 hours, and I'll touch it, see how it feels. I guess we'll wait and see. I'm hoping that it's going to be somewhat dry to the touch, although I don't think it's going to be, just because of the amount of material that we had to put on. But we shall see. I tell you what, I am a friggin' genius. I never measured how much paint was left. So let's see what we got. So now we started off with 4 ounces in this cup, and as far as how much is left, so it looks like we have a little over 2 ounces left. So figure in some of the waste with the roll. Let's just figure, we're going to spitball this a little bit. Let's just say we use 2 ounces of material, so twice as much to actually coat the non-skid as we used for actually doing the smooth layer. That's not bad. I actually thought it was going to be more than double, but no, looks so far looks to be just double. So now after about 6 hours, the first coat was dry, at least to the point where I felt comfortable going over top of it. Now again, just to kind of stress this, typically I would urge you to go that 12 to 24 hour window, but you know, it felt ready after 6. So I ran with it, and again, this is a little bit of an experiment. Now, before we actually get to how much material was used for coat number 2, a couple of questions that I'm pretty sure are going to be coming up. The first one being, could I get away with only applying 1 seal coat on here instead of 2? And my answer is going to be no, because after 1 coat, even if you were, well, let's just stick with that. After 1 coat, that surface, it feels kind of fuzzy. It doesn't feel like a hard non-skid surface. Probably the best way to explain it would be like if you've ever touched like mole skin. Remember that stuff we used to put on the inside of our shoes to keep from getting blisters and that kind of thing? But it's just kind of like that very soft, kind of a fuzzy kind of a feel. That's kind of what that surface felt like after 1 coat. And I know just from prior experience, you know, even if I were to let this go past the 24 hours so that the paint is cured, it still has that fuzzy feeling. So what that means is that it's going to become a dirt magnet. And once it gets stained, you're never going to get that out. You know, so 2 coats is really the deal for encasing that non-skid and just, you know, giving it the protection that it needs. Now, the other question, could I get away with doing 3 coats if I wanted to? And well, yeah, I guess technically you could. I don't know why you would want to. It's, you know, added cost and materials and extra work, but technically you could. The only downside that I would see to that is that after 3 coats, you might start to actually fill in the texture of the non-skid, so that you're going to lose a lot of the texture. You're going to lose what the non-skid, you know, is supposed to be doing, giving you grip. So I don't know that that's really worth doing, you know, just for that simple reason alone. You know, I guess the long and short of it, 2 coats is kind of the magic number. I mean, there's no point in trying to fix something that's not broke. And 2 coats on this, 2 good heavy coats, it just works. Oh yeah, and one other question that I'm sure is going to come up. What happens if you miss that 24-hour recoat window? Well, that's not good. Once you miss that recoat window, you essentially have to start over from square one. So any work that's been done up to that point really needs to be removed. And like I said, you're starting over from square one, which sucks. That's the only downside to this method of applying the non-skid. But that's the only downside. Other than that, it's just absolutely amazing. So, question of the hour. I'm trying to keep this level so I can. All right. So coat number 1, which was the initial smooth coat that we sprinkled the non-skid into, that was roughly 1 ounce of material to wet out 1 square foot. To do the first seal coat, that took roughly 2 ounces, and to do this second and final seal coat, I think you can see it. It barely took 1, just slightly over 1 ounce. And you know, I didn't really press off that much from the roller into the roller tray, so I'm going to go with 1, 2, 1. So in total, to do 1 square foot of non-skid start to finish, again only looking at the paint aspect of it, we're looking at 4 ounces of paint, mixed paint, per square foot start to finish. Pretty cool. And on that note, I'm going to wrap this video up. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Thank you in advance. I really appreciate that. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave those down below. I will do my best to follow up with you. And as always, I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of the weekend, and I will see you in the next video. Time to go watch the Packers!
This has been a Boatworks Today production.